Hey folks, welcome to episode number 466 of the Voxology podcast. Today we're recording from multiple locations. First half of the episode is Mike's in Florida on vacation. Second half he's at home. At the 2-minute mark, we'll start a little bit of banter talking about the Olympics, catching up on a few things. At the 7-minute mark, I pose a question to Mike, just with all the recent events that have been going on. The shooting and murder of Sonia Massey, the assassination attempt, and just the war in Gaza, all the different things that are, while we're in the midst of talking about human dignity, how do we posture ourselves and how do we continue to engage in a way that may change how humans are dignified in the broader culture versus just reacting and lamenting continually? It's a question I've posed before, but I think it's an important one to revisit as we figure out how do we exist and make the teachings of Jesus not just something that was said 2,000 years ago, but is something that he's advocating for today. How do we love our enemy and our neighbor in the most constructive ways? So it's a heavy question. It takes a little bit for us to get through it. And at the 33:30 mark, we start the content for today, getting into Genesis and diversity and men and women. Here we go.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Voxology podcast. Today we are filming in 3 different locations. Part 1, the very, I think, underrated banter section is being filmed. I am in Palm Coast, Florida. So it's a great time to vacation here because it's about 95 degrees and 95% humidity. Oh yeah, you can literally float on the air. It's glorious, except we're near the beach, which makes it tolerable. Timothy, as always, is fighting wildfires in California.
Oh my gosh.
This time of year. Totally, man. And then after this very underappreciated banter section, there will be a content section where I am recording from the hub of Christian culture, Nashville, Tennessee.
Ooh.
And Tim, with the blonde hair, will be still in Auburn, California. Yes, Seth Erie. Now, I have not told Seth that we're recording. I want to see if he recognizes the tone and pitch of my voice. Totally. Because he's uncanny. He is uncanny when it comes to recognizing when I'm trying to record without him. So anyway, I mean, bro, I go on vacation and big presidential stuff happens again.
Yeah.
Right. So fill me in. So Biden withdrew. Is that the official term?
I think so. Yeah. Stepped down, stepped out, ended his candidacy. I don't know. Yeah. And then Kamala has jumped in.
Will she get the nomination? I mean, is that a lock?
She has a lot of momentum behind her in this first week or whatever. So it seems illogical, but the Democratic Party makes lots of illogical decisions. So we'll just see what time does.
I mean, I saw, like, I have not really been checking social media or anything. It's been glorious. We rent these little canopies at the beach. And I was just telling Tim, I don't even bring a book. I stare at the ocean for 3 or 4 hours a day.
Good for your soul.
Oh, it is, man. I feel it rejuvenate just right there.
That's great.
And I look out for sharks.
That's also great. There's a metaphor in there.
Okay. The Olympics started. So woohoo.
Woohoo.
Okay.
I never watched
anything
the Olympics.
Else?
I don't think I've watched the Olympics since the Dream Team.
Wow.
So
you don't strike
90s.
me as an Olympic watcher. I think that if they had some sort of like Running Man sort of Olympics.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? You'd love it.
That would nail it.
You would definitely, you'd be all in.
If the Olympics was, what was that show? Squid Games?
Oh, I didn't see that. Was that good?
No, I don't know.
Okay. All right. I don't know. I got nothing, guys. I got nothing. I've been totally out of touch. Tim was like, dude, let's record banter live from Palm Coast of Florida. And we're like, yes. My kids and I went to play pickleball this morning we were the youngest by decades. It was, and they ran us all over the court. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Dude, you never underestimate 75-year-old women with knee braces. Never. I'm telling you, Tim.
We did a fundraiser. I didn't even know what pickleball was. And we did a fundraiser, a pickleball tournament fundraiser.
Oh, yeah.
And a few of those ladies showed up and I was like, oh, yeah, look at these, and they come in and they did have their knee braces and full matching attire. And then they smoked almost everybody.
I'm telling you what, and again, we can stamp this pickleball. Okay. So let's call out the timestamps as we do it. Pickleball, I've learned, it's a game where you can, the bar is really low. So entry is easy. You can go over and dink and just, it's great. And so you can it's relatively easy to be decent. It's really hard to be good. And that's what makes it, I think, so fun.
Yeah.
Is like you walk into, I've played against people who are like hunched over. They're kind of, their frame is bent, they're in their 80s or whatever. And they're just a freaking Jedi Knight at the net. It's ridiculous. And I've got to watch the word freaking.
That was a feedback.
Yeah, that was feedback. And good Lord, I got a good Lord.
That too. Yep.
Rebuke as well. So
you have a filthy mouth, Mike.
Dadgummit is one my kids make fun of.
There's a hat. You don't wear hats, but there's a company that I follow that makes a hat that says Dadgummit. And every time I see it pop up, I'm like, I should buy this for Mike, but he'll never wear it.
You should. Well, listen, the camera adds a lot of to my dome. So maybe a hat would help sort of, even it out. All right, Tim, what do we got today, buddy? What do we got?
Well, this will be a hard transition. I wanted to ask you a question about human. So we've been spending all this time in Genesis talking about humanity and talking about God's intention for humanity. And is reverence the right word? God's reverence for humanity, or his interest or love or
dignifying?
Yeah, I don't know. But there's so much of that, right? We've kind of that keeps popping up, that God was very interested in this, and this seems to be worthwhile, and the implications for all of us within that, with humanity. I was thinking about a lot of it with, Kamala Harris came out with her first campaign thing, and it was a lot of dignifying different types of people. And I thought that was refreshing because so much of politics is negative. We had the prime minister from Israel in America yesterday.
Oh, I literally thought your house. And I was like, it wouldn't shock me.
Nope, that didn't happen at our house. But it provoked a lot of questions about human dignity because of the conflict that's going on over there. And, this has been one, the Ukraine-Russia war got pretty divided. I'm not sure why or how. This one has been divided from the get-go, obviously. And there's a lot of different pieces of the puzzle that are in there. But at the base level of the entire conflict is a conversation about the dignity of human lives, right? On whether you're advocating that Israel has the right to defend herself against Hamas, or the way that Israel has been handling that response in Gaza has been just a lot of loss of life. I was talking to a buddy about the shooter from the Trump thing, and just a young white male with access to a really big weapon that a lot of folks have been trying to get rid of for a while. But we just keep learning more and more about how troubled he was, and these so long and short of it. Oh, and then of course there was another terrible shooting this week, and a woman named Sonia Massey, like a 36-year-old African-American woman, called 911, and they showed up and ended up shooting her in her kitchen. And people are debating all over the place about whether or not, because she was boiling water and it looked, I don't know, but there's a whole bunch, but it's really, really sad and disparaging. And it's another what seems to be a completely just a loss of life for no purpose, no reason. Not that there's ever really a great reason for the loss of life, but these just feel like what? How we're on this repeat of, and so as we go through Genesis and we've been doing all this human stuff, I just keep as any one of these events pop up, I just keep thinking about how am I supposed to posture myself and advocate for humanity and for life, for human life. So that's obviously complicated in some of those examples. In others, it's easy. When it comes to gun reform, that kind of stuff, we're not moving the needle on that. And so while I would continue to vote and advocate for those things, in the immediate moment, how do we advocate for human life? And so when it comes to gun stuff, that's kind of easy, right? We're saying her name, and at least in the terms of reflecting publicly and saying this, and voting and trying to change things with this. With the stuff like the kid that shot at Trump, I feel like that's even more complicated. He instantly became a political tool for both sides of the fence. And while what he did was tragic and people lost their lives in there, he was also a really tragic figure in all of this.
Was he?
Yeah, he was bullied and he was a confused kid and he was young, and he found a way to, I'm sure we'll learn more and more about him as time passes, but I guess maybe it comes down to we're just continuing a symptoms versus causes approach to everything, but we're also doing that with how we treat human beings or how we advocate for human life. And so while we're in this, I don't know if you have any thoughts. Mike has none of this, so I was just putting him on the spot with this, but how do we posture ourselves in a holistic way to advocate for human life within these times? Yeah. We get a lot of emails asking for that about how do I so our episode last week provoked some questions about that with how do I continue to have these conversations, and and people sent emails from both sides of the conversation, like pushing back on what we said and then also asking for more. But even that conversation is one about how do you advocate for human dignity. And so I don't know. This week was tumultuous, as almost every week is. Goodness. But
seriously,
so much life is being lost all the time, and they just turn into talking points. And I know I've raised this question multiple times, but I have a feeling I'll be wrestling with it until I expire. So I'm not sure. I just want this feels like the gospel to me. How to advocate for human dignity and reformation and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
So I don't know. I don't know if there's answers to those questions or just me kind of exercising the questions out loud. But
the thing I love about you is, that's lament. That's a very biblical posture already.
Yeah.
What's wrong with us? So I'm already even if that's all we did, that's active. That's a counter, right? We're speaking things that are true. We're lamenting over those things in a covenant context. So absolutely. I read something this week that has, I'm doing a bunch of study around political theory and political discipleship, and for obvious reasons. And one author was arguing, whatever it is that the church wants to see in the world should see in the church first. And that quote came to mind while you were speaking. So, take the pro-life, the abortion issue, which we've hashed ad nauseum. Really easy to protest, and really easy to make that a one issue sort of voting guide. Much harder, and there are people who do this, so this isn't, but much harder to create a culture of life in the church such that people would joyfully and willingly enter into the community, even if they weren't Jesus followers, who were considering abortions because they would be so well taken care of. Not only they, but their children.
Yeah.
That's a much harder, longer, more costly sort of play. So I'm because one of the big political issues that both progressive Christians and conservative Christians agree on is that Christianity should shape the way we vote and the way we see the world. And I'm struggling with buying that. I'm looking in vain for passages that say your job, Christians, is to change the world. I just see a zillion passages that say your job, Christian, is to be the church. And so one of the things that I'm wondering when it comes to police reform or mental health is, yes, let's have opinions and let's vote for policies and let's do all of that. But there's just so rarely, at least in my experience, a commitment on the inside of the church to be the vibrant counter culture, even if the church is 10 people. Mm-hmm. So that how we treat the mentally ill in our midst, I can't do anything about this poor kid, and understand that there was some sort of evil in his heart that drove him to do this, and we lament the death that accompanied that act. But there's a sense that those issues are so big for me that it's just easy to, spin your wheels, virtue signal on social media, and just be angry. Right. And I keep being confronted with how does instead of saying how do I dignify life out there, I keep being confronted with, okay, how do I need to participate in a church community so that life is dignified and that we provide a counter narrative? And I know I always come back to this, but I in the face of so much, I don't know where else to go. You know what I mean? Right. I can't just, It can't be me in a screen being angry and hurt. So it has to be communal. But this idea that the church, whatever think about how differently we would act if we really believed that whatever change we wanted for the world, you should see in the church first. Yeah. I mean, wow, that would be significantly revolutionary. And when you study church history, that's how the church won the world. Now, they didn't win it in the way that Jesus won it. You know what I mean? I mean, ultimately it was co-opted by Constantine and whatever else. But a band of 3,000 disciples who were Jewish in 200 years, there are millions and millions of them, mostly not Jewish. I mean, to explain that, authors can only go back to the vibrancy of the communities themselves that were so attractive to the marginalized, that the marginalized came flooding into the kingdom because of it. And that's just the opposite of what we see happen. You know what I mean? The church isn't safe for the mentally ill. The church isn't safe for people who want to have very vigorous discussions around guns from a theological perspective, right? We're either going to say yes, we're going to say no, or we're just not going to talk about it. Yeah. Right. I'm lamenting. But that's what your thoughts or your comments made me think of, is that I have all of this energy and I don't know what to do with it. And I think being redirected by the New Testament into this local participation community of believers. You know what I mean?
It's just a really hard balance between those two things, and then not like the lament, just being, how would you even word that? Like lament exhaustion.
Absolutely.
And you just want to I don't want to become numb to even an individual life. Like we've talked about becoming numb to mass shootings, and this Sonia Massey woman, this was one singular woman in her kitchen.
Where was this?
I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Keep going. It's just like it's it's a talking point that's quickly moved on from, especially in today's climate where there's so much happening and there's so much disagreement and upheaval about everything. So we're constantly arguing and fighting.
Yeah.
But these arguments and these fights, like the Israel-Palestine thing, like this is just a debate that is costing so many lives every day. It's just I don't know what the posture. I don't even know if there's a right answer. This may just be what it means to care, simply enough.
Yeah.
But man, I don't want to become numb to it. But at the same time, as we've talked ad nauseum about that balance of personal mental health and advocacy or whatever. It's just, I don't know.
So what do you think of this, Tim? I'm curious as to your response. Another book I was reading was talking about how, and it's this is so tired, but I think there's something to it. He was talking about how social media is anti-discipleship. You literally take the Beatitudes and flip them upside down, and that's everything that's celebrated on our social media feeds. And so I'm wondering, is it possible to be a normal, healthy human and be immersed in social media? That's what I'm wondering. What do you think?
I don't know if it's possible to be a healthy human being in any respect, I think is what I'm worried about. I don't know if it's, but I see what you're saying, but I'm like, at the same time, this is how we know about whatever X, Y, and Z, and how we learn to position ourselves and advocate for things. This is the time period that we're in. Like if this was a Marvel, whatever, we're in like the social media saga of humanity. Like this is how we operate. So when I talk to my students about it, I'm like, hey, we go through all the evils of social media in class. We'll read all these articles about it. And they're the generation that was born with it. All right. Like you and I did 20, 30 years or whatever before this became a thing.
Dude, I had a Palm Pilot. Yes.
Well, so we acclimated to this, but this generation was born with it. They've had this device or this means of communication in their hands from day one. So I'm like, they're largely going to dictate how this is used in the future. So we'll talk about that in class. Like you guys will set the course. Is social media going to go away? They all say, no, you're probably correct. So how do you navigate this life healthy? Is it getting rid of it altogether and living in a hole somewhere? Or I don't know. And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, like cutting yourself off from the way in which the world has decided to connect itself. Would that make you healthier? Probably in some ways. But in some ways, I feel like people who are connected to social media and just say thoughts and prayers for everything have like cognitively disassociated or disconnected. And so I don't know. I don't know if it's a posture that you hold in every situation, and that helps you to move towards health and your neighbor's health and your enemy's health. You know, loving your neighbor and your enemy, like I said a few weeks ago, like this is the time period that I'm in. This is the thing that I'm learning. And so the fact that we're sitting in this now in this series too is just like I'm seeing it and looking at it and thinking about it everywhere. How do I love my enemy? And I was thinking this morning before we started recording, like when I was working in the prison, it really forced you to look at people that society has deemed, because of their own actions, the worst. You know, and these guys were all serving life without parole. And but at the same time, you're in there and you're looking into their eyes and seeing human beings. And you're just like, well, now my whole world is feeling topsy-turvy. And, you know, I'm having these conversations with these men who did heinous things, but want redemption. Do they deserve it? I think so, but I don't know. You know, so it's a really complicated, I'm sure there is no black and white response to everything. That seems to be the key to everything, is that we have to learn how to navigate the gray. But
well, if your question is, how do I posture myself in a way that values life? The question I want to ask is, by using social media, you're already malformed into posturing yourself, just in virtue of it. I'm not even talking about the content of it. I'm
just
talking
the way
about
you have to engage it.
Yes. And what it rewards and what it punishes. And I mean, so, and I don't know. I don't have an answer. I'm just, I hear what you say, and it's like, well, yeah, the kids are going to do it anyway, so let's have them do it safely. Yes, I'm all for safer internet use, but I also, and maybe this is just a naive, idealistic question, but I'm also just wondering for my own humanity, how much social media malforms me into predetermined camps that are not honoring life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because there's some research coming out, like Jonathan Haidt wrote a book on the anxious generation, that social media use itself, regardless of content, is shaping us
Totally
away from our full humanity. And I don't want to be a prudish voice that just says, "Hey, we'll just cut it all off." But I don't know. I'm open to the idea. And you're right. I mean, I watch what it does to my children and how engaged they are, but I never look at them and think, man, they're better off for their engagement with this. Not once have I ever said, oh yeah, they're really better off right now. And in my own participation, I never come away looking at social media feeling better and more hopeful. And I get the counter, man. Yeah, of course, we got to be in touch with what's happening. And you can, you're like, you can go dig a hole somewhere. And I know you don't mean that pejoratively. But so many of my answers to your big questions keep driving me back to local community. I just like, there it is. And it's what you do. And you've taught me a lot about this because, we haven't been able to say all that you do and all that you're involved in Auburn, but man, you guys live this left and right, Tim. Absolutely.
We're trying to, but even like when you're talking about social media malforming. And then I was playing that on my head as you were talking about it and stepping away from that. Let's say I cut that completely out, or anybody does that. Let's say Joe cuts out social media completely from his life. But we are being malformed in everything, right? If it wasn't social media, it's the news or it's local. So I had a really conversation with a friend about gender issues that his son was asking about, and just why is pink feminine, blue male? I like pink. And just these little things that are societal.
Why is blonde boring, for instance?
Exactly. What is it? Like, there's so many elements of society, a lot that we don't even think about, that are forming us all the time. So it's like, how do we advocate for people to be postured in a way that they can exist in the world as it is and still continue to push towards what it is, like what God is trying to do? I don't know. These are kind of generic questions, but this is what I think about when I'm looking out in the world.
Yes, totally. And yes, I just want to counter the counter that says, well, everything's malforming us. Yes, but we don't have to be complicit in it.
Totally.
And I would say social media is an accelerant on so many of our, and again, what if we just took Sabbath, or what if we practiced, Jubilee, or took these Old Testament land concepts and said, hey, well, what if we, and again, I don't know that that's an answer to everything, but I do think one of the answers to a lot of these things is the New Testament's vision is that when I think of political issues, I should think of my church first, not partisan politics, that the church needs to engage in creating the kind of culture that then says to the world, hey, see, because we do the reverse. We're shouting at the world to clean up its sexual ethics, and look at ours. We're shouting at the world to be pro-life.
The world's shouting back at us now. There's been enough exposure. What about, what do you think lastly, just for people that, since we have so many listeners, myself included, that are not a part of a church and cannot find a church or are uncomfortable in church?
Well, my friend, I think you are part of a church. And this is dumb. So granted, dumb. You're right. To be a Christian is to be part of the church. Doesn't mean you're part of a 501c3 institution, but you are part of a church. You, my friend Timothy, are part of a little church community. Absolutely, even though it's not an organized, sort of structured thing. I do think intentional and structured things are good and healthy for people, meaning, the rhythms of Eucharist or baptism or being around people that you haven't chosen, and receiving them as gifts. I mean, I think there's a lot of that, but I wouldn't broaden the word church to include a lot more than just the
Sunday
501c3 stuff.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you are with a group of like-minded people who are all expressing very similar frustrations with institutional life of this thing called the American church. But yet you practice the Jesus kind of life together. So I don't know. I don't have a much, stricter definition. I do think that there is power in being intentional together and not just being ad hoc, like, hey, let's hang out whenever we want to and kind of do whatever we want to. I think there is something that's formative about liturgies and about routines and those sorts of things. But yeah, bro, just knowing what I know of you, I'm like, there's part of me that envies your participation in your city because you've been there a long time. You've been away. You grew up, been away, come back. You have loads of friends. You're known. You and your neighbors have the most ridiculous relationship in the history of the world. Like when you were remodeling your bathroom and you used theirs. Come on now. So I don't know, man. I think you do this so great.
I know. There's just that's a common question that we get in emails. It's just like, I can't find a church. I don't know how many times we get an email. It's like, do you guys know of a church in XYZ that fits? And it's like, no, we don't know of any churches anywhere. But we tried the micro communities before COVID and different things to help people connect and build and foster this. But I know that for a generation, for the deconstructed generation, the shame and the guilt around not being in a building and not being connected is heavy and palpable and is causing a lot of therapy.
But yep. Yes, totally. And I think there's as always, there's a counter movement to that where people are being imaginative around, what these things can look like far beyond, a celebrity on a stage with a concert. So anyway, man, Tim, you always raise such great questions and issues. As my wife cooks some toast in the kitchen right next to me. What are you putting on that toast, honey bear? Oh, she's got her headphones. She's listening to her own thing. That's funny. That's why she doesn't know that we can hear her. We are going to continue on in To Be Human series today. We've got some juicy stuff, guys. We're not going to lie. It's some juicy stuff today. So enjoy. Give us your thoughts. We're so very grateful to be a small part of your life. And I'm going to see if I can bleach my hair blonde too.
Do it, Doug.
All right, everybody, let's go and move on in Genesis. We are moving just light speed, ladies and gentlemen. To Be Human part. What is part number what?
I don't even know part.
Okay. If you don't know 16. It off the top of your head, you're fine. 16. Here we go. We're in Genesis 2, and we're going to talk about male and female today, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, yeah. So when we last left our hero, he was saying to the man, to the Adam, you are free to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for when you eat of it, you will certainly die. We talked about the command is to enjoy first. The die is exiled to the realm of death, away from the tree of life. What is the tree and why did it give good and evil? We've talked about all of that stuff. I want to remind us because then there's an abrupt shift. Then the Lord God said, it's not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him. So you're like, okay, so we just ended with the two trees, you'll die. And then it's the helper. So I want to review a little bit. about the big movements in Genesis 2 and 3, right? We go from wasteland at the beginning of Genesis 2 to Eden now. And then we go from isolation to relationship. That's the move we're in right now. We go from just the soul Adam to now a relational component. And then in 3, we're going to go from that relational component to isolation again. And then we're going to go from Eden to wasteland. Mm-hmm. So we get these big sort of swells, and we've covered the first one. There is a region called Eden. At the center of that region, there's a garden. At the center of the garden are these 2 trees that represent Torah, the way of life, the way of death, and the same choice that's before all of us. So when the Lord God says it's not good for the human to be alone, I will make a helper suitable for him. There are some words here that just jump out. Not good is the biggest one. It's not good. So it's lo tov. It's not the word ra here. It's lo tov. It's not good. And interesting, what is not good? God declared in Genesis 1, God made them male and female in his image. So the thing that's not good is that there is just a solitary Adam. Mm-hmm. Because the vocation to fill the earth, subdue it, and rule over it was to be carried by male and female. And so right now, when we're zeroing in on if Genesis is the real and the initial statement of creation, and Genesis 1 is that, and Genesis 2 is the zeroing in on the priesthood that is going to kind of serve and work in the temple space of the garden. We're getting now an account about how the solitary human could not fill, subdue, and rule by being a solitary human. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was like, what pronoun should I use here? So remember, it's the human alone. It's not the gendered male. It's the human. And so don't read genderedness. Genderedness doesn't come till the end of 2. This is just the solitary human. And what's not good is that the human is solitary. The not good part is the human cannot fulfill the vocation that the human was given in Genesis 1 to fill, rule, and subdue, and in Genesis 2, which is to work and keep the garden, the worship, priestly work.
Now, do you think that that's because of the amount of work, or is it because we are meant to be in community?
I don't think it's an amount of work issue. I think it's an image of God issue.
Yeah.
The solitary human cannot image God as a royal priest by being a solitary human.
Totally.
Yes. So that part is relatively straightforward. The human, we're not talking about a gendered male, and not good. Again, all you've been hearing is everything is tov, everything is tov, everything was tov, everything was tov. But now, because the human image in Genesis 1 consists of 2.
Can we be Bible nerds from now on when we text and just be like, no, it's all tov?
It's tov. It's all tov. Absolutely. It's lo tov, which is different than Tove Lo, who is a Swedish pop star.
Well played.
So God, according to Genesis 1, God cannot be properly imaged until there's a plurality, a duality. And so the solitary human, even though the solitary human has been made to be an image bearer, doesn't image God fully and cannot fulfill the vocation given in Genesis 1 and 2. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So let's get into, I will make a helper suitable for him, because shocking, this has been greatly misunderstood.
What?
Yeah, I know. So let's deal first with the word helper, because in English it sounds like, the gendered man needs an assistant. Mm-hmm. It's like the boss on Mad Men who just needs a fleet of female assistants to sort of, keep him on track or something. That word, and we've covered bits of this before, so this shouldn't be terribly unfamiliar. But the word there is the word Ezer. And it means, as we'll see, savior or saving, if it's used in a kind of a ing sense, or deliverance through conflict. Right? It's a very strong word. It's not there's no hint of inferiority here, and I'm going to demonstrate that in a second. Yeah. So Ezer, has been translated help meet, which is awful from the King James Version, helper that's suitable, a helper that's fit. These are all different ways it's been translated. But the word help here doesn't mean assistant, but it means the role of an indispensable other without which something cannot be done. So the word rescuer or deliverer is totally appropriate here. The noun is interesting. It's masculine in grammatical gender, which means the word is a kind of title or role descriptor. It's not an adjective. Mm-hmm. All right. So the noun occurs 21 times in the Hebrew Bible outside of Genesis 2. And it's almost always used of Yahweh as a deliverer and Ezer to his people. So if anything, if you're going to take it as strong versus weak, the helper suitable is actually the stronger one, if you're going to read it that way.
Right.
If you're going to read these as one strong, one's weak, then grammatically, the strong one is always the Ezer,
that's
Yahweh.
Huge.
That is huge. But I think we're saying something else than that.
Totally.
But I'm just saying if you're going to read it in that way, you've got to be consistent. And it's the Ezer is the strong one.
Yeah.
So I'm going to read a bunch of verses just showing how Ezer is used.
Yeah.
All right.
Shout out Bonnie Lewis. You guys had this conversation in like the tens of the podcast. Really
Shout out Bonnie Lewis. Exodus 18. The other person was named Eliezer, for he said, my father's God was my Ezer. He saved me from the sword of Pharaoh. So God is not an assistant. God is the rescuer. Psalm 20. May God send you Ezer, help from the sanctuary, and grant you support from Zion when you are in distress. Rescuer, deliverer. Deuteronomy 33. Hear, Lord, the cry of Judah. Bring him to his people. With his own hands, he defends his cause. Oh, be his Ezer against his foes. In this case, be his military strength. Psalm 33, but the eyes of the Lord are on those who fear him, on those who hope in his unfailing love, to deliver them from death and keep them alive in famine. We wait and hope for the Lord. He is our Ezer and our shield. Deuteronomy, again, 33, verse 26. There is no one like the God of Jeshurun, who rides across the heavens as your Ezer and on the clouds in his majesty. The eternal God is your refuge. So the idea is, right, God is our protection, our strength. Psalm 121, I lift my eyes to the mountains. Where does my Ezer come from? My Ezer comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. Blessed are you, Israel. Who is like you, a people saved by the Lord? He is your shield and your Ezer. We translate it strength. Psalm 146, blessed are those whose Ezer is the God of Jacob, whose hope is in the Lord. He is the maker of heaven and earth. Right? Now, there are a couple of times when it's used to describe military backup, although in context, the military backup fails in comparison to Yahweh's help. So the times when Israel trusted in its own military prowess or in its political allegiances rather than Yahweh, Yahweh's described as the Ezer that they neglected. Right? But Pharaoh's protection will be to your shame. So they've made a treaty with Pharaoh. Egypt's shade will be your disgrace. So they think a military alliance between Egypt and one of the kingdoms will protect them. Though they have put officials in Zoan and their envoys have arrived in Hanes, everyone will be put to shame because of a people useless to them who will bring neither Ezer nor advantage, but only shame and disgrace. In other words, your political allegiance will not bring you what Yahweh does. So, Ezer,
timely,
God's help or rescue, it describes someone who plays the role of the indispensable other. So, unless God rescues me, I'm done. Mm-hmm. Right? That's what an Ezer is. So it's help, but it's rescuing help, saving help. So the Adam, is solitary. So what is deliverance, saving, rescuing help going to look like? What's going to look like plurality now in the human family. Make sense?
Yeah.
Problem, the human is solitary. Solution, let's make an Ezer. Mm-hmm. And that Ezer comes not as an inferior, but as a rescuer and a deliverer of the soul human from solitary confinement and the inability to fulfill the role the humans were to play in the garden. Boom. Victor P. Hamilton, in his commentary on Genesis, says
that's
this.
A name.
Victor P. The new creation which man needs, now again, he's using gendered language, which the human needs, is called an Ezer, which is masculine in gender, though here it will be a term for woman. Any suggestion that this particular word denotes one who has only an associate or subordinate status to a senior member is refuted by the fact that most frequently the same word describes Yahweh's relationship to Israel. He is Yahweh's help because he is the stronger one. Right? So, I mean, come on, ladies. Come on, ladies. Now, the kind of help she's bringing, the kind of rescue and deliverance she's bringing is suitable, right? So she's a suitable helper. We just looked at the word helper. Let's look at the word suitable. Kenegdo. Kenegdo is a compound word. And it's K, which means like, as, or according to. It's like there's something that's similar. And neged means in front of or opposite. So it's something that's like me, but opposite me. It's something that's similar to me, but in front of me in an opposite kind of way. Mm-hmm. So like when you look at your reflection in a mirror, it's an alike opposite. Correct?
Yeah.
Because my right is the left. Yes, exactly right. So when you're looking at a mirror, you're looking at something that's similar but different. So this is a really, really cool phrase, right? So the word ke, that's a preposition that's used all over the place. And the ged it means to be like in front of something. So it's used spatially. So like in Exodus 19, Israel camped there in the desert in front of the mountain. And that's the word neged. Or Exodus 34, before all your people, and the ged, before all your people I will do wonders never done before in any nation of the world. So it seems to be, the idea, Kenegdo seems to be somebody who's like or as or according to, but opposite and in front of. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's your alike opposite. It's a mirror image, in other words. Victor P. Hamilton, yet again. The last part of Genesis 2:18 reads, I will make him for him a helper as in front of him. This last phrase, as in front of him, occurs only here and in verse 20. It suggests that what God creates for the Adam will correspond to him. Thus, the new creation will neither be a superior nor an inferior, but an equal. The creation of this helper will form one half of a polarity and will be to man as the South Pole is to the North Pole. So you see, in both phrases, I will make a helper suitable, Ezer Kenegdo. In both phrases, there's not one hint of inferiority here.
Yeah.
Right? In fact, if there's a hint of anything, it's rescue and strength that's being brought to the human. So Mackey suggests this this retranslation of Genesis 2:18. It is not good for the soul human to be solitary. I, God, will make one who can deliver him from his inability to fulfill the divine commission alone, one who mirrors him. I think that's a great translation. So she's not a she yet, but whoever the Ezer is will be the deliverer that the man needs. Now, the whole point of the next story, which is where the human is invited to name the animals, is to show that such an Ezer does not exist, but has to be created. Right? So the Lord God had formed out of the ground all the wild animals and all the birds in the sky. He brought them to the human to see what the human would name them. And whatever the human named them, that's what its name was. Now, again, we talked about this when we talked about power and agency, right? The humans, to be an image bearer means you have real authority in the world. And this is an example of that the human is doing something that God had been doing. right? He's naming. Now he's naming things already created. So there's a difference between God's creative work and humans' creative work. But the human is still imitating God as an image bearer, right? And it would be totally inappropriate for the Adam to look at God and say, God, I surrender this to you. This is part of what image bearing looks like. But the phrase, so the man gave names to all the livestock, birds in the sky, all the wild animals, but for Adam, no Ezer Kenegdo was found. This is like a dramatic way of heightening the drama. What's going to happen? The solution, the problem is the human is solitary. The solution is the human needs an Ezer Kenegdo. The problem again is that there is no Ezer Kenegdo to be found. So what's the solution? God will make one. Do you see the flow of that? Problem alone, I will make an Ezer. There's no Ezer here. I will make an Ezer. All right.
Adam wasn't a dog person.
Oh, dog. Yeah. I mean, who knows? I have no idea. It's interesting, though. Naming something in the ancient world carries with it much more than just a label you call
Totally.
something. So we got a question about when does Adam name Eve? And because the big complementarian argument that you'll get in Genesis here is that the man was created first, then Eve was created second. The man named Eve the same way the man named the animals. And in naming the animals, the man was showing he had authority over them. And so when the man names the woman, he has authority over her. The problem is he doesn't name her until after the fall. That's the big counter to that. He defines her as Ish and Isha, but that's not her name. He defines her as Ezer Kenegdo. We'll see that in just a second. So good, bro. I know.
It's so hard to think about. Well, I'm just like, what do you call it? Theology that has like just this, taken something and like completely perverted it in the opposite direction. Use something that was made for good to be used for evil, to do it in the simplest terms. Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like,
yep.
As you're defining these words, it's just like, how in the world did we go so far in the opposite direction? But then I was like listening to Jamar Tisby talking about like slave Bible and all that different kind of stuff. And it's like, how often have we repeated that kind of thing to subdue other people?
Today.
Yeah,
absolutely.
God, Lord. I just can't imagine what God's reaction is to that.
And that's the death. We take the rule and subdue and now apply it to each other. Because remember, we talked about in ruling over, there's no suggestion humans should rule over each other.
No.
But that's the first thing that happens in Genesis 3.
Yeah.
Is now the man will rule over the woman. And then we meet cities where there's all sorts of exploitation and everything else. So problem, solution. No help around the animal kingdom. So God has to form Ezer Kenegdo. Verse 21, the Lord God caused the human to fall into a deep sleep. Now, we don't have time to go over this word, but the word is a visionary sleep. It's a word that's used lots of places where you're not sleeping, you're not dreaming, but you're being shown the significance of something. All right? So Adam is being shown, this isn't about how the woman is created as much as it is about what the woman is going to represent, that she's the Ezer Kenegdo. Okay? So the human has seen there's no Ezer Kenegdo in the created world already. So he's gonna see now.
If you and Seth ever start a Rammstein metal band, you should call it Ezer Kenegdo. It's a good metal band name.
That's so beautiful. Let's do it. Ezer Kenegdo. There might be one. I wouldn't be shocked that there's one out there. All right. So he took one of the man's ribs and then closed up the place with flesh. Then the Lord God made a woman.
Less, right?
Yeah, I've counted them. Then the Lord God made a woman from the side he'd taken out of the man and brought her to the man. The man said, "This is now bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. This should be called woman," which is not a name, that's a designation. For she was taken out of man. This is why a man leaves his father and mother, is united to his wife, they become one flesh. Now, good Lord, there is so much of what it means to be human in these verses. So let's just go through them really, really slowly. the Lord God caused the man to fall into a deep sleep, covered deep sleep, visionary sleep. While he was sleeping, he took one of the man's ribs. Now this, buddy, this is so dumb because there's no rib here. The word Selah or Selah is used about 40 times in the Hebrew Bible. This is from John Walton, okay? But it's not an anatomical term in any other passage, ever. Outside of Genesis 2, with the exception of 2 Samuel 16, referring to the other side of the hill, the word that we translate rib here or side, the word is used architecturally in the temple tabernacle passages. All right, this becomes really, really important. It can refer to planks or beams in these passages, but more often it refers to one side of the temple or tabernacle than the other side of the temple or tabernacle. Rooms, typically when there are two sides, like rings along two sides of the ark, rooms on two sides of the temple, the north side or the south side, that's where this word is used. On the basis of Adam's statement, combined with this data on usage, we would have to conclude that God took one of the human sides, likely meaning he cut Adam in half and from one side built the woman. So now, and we could get into, Tim can show you, and YouTube has provided pages of data that we can go through about how this is used. But it's so interesting that the Ezer Kenegdo that is built uses an architectural term that's used almost exclusively of temple and tabernacle, which were places where God Ezered his people. Isn't that genius that the woman becomes like this architectural, like Ezer, the way the temple and the tabernacle become architectural.
So what is rib? Just a lazy translation of side?
It can be translated rib, but like the rib of a boat. Right, the better term is side, but like, you know how a boat could have ribs, like
so
if
it's structural, even in that sense as well. Interesting.
Yes. Now I've read a couple of people who disagree with this interpretation, but the usage, he's right on the usage. It's only used. It's never used anatomically ever, and so the idea that the God took the one human, and then he turned them into a gendered pair is absolutely what I think is being taught here. They haven't been gendered yet. They're gendered now. And the way God does it is with the same care and attention he uses to build the Ezers of tabernacle and temple. I mean, it's just brilliant. So could there be any stronger message of the equality between male and female than this? She's named an Ezer, which is a strong helper. A Kenegdo, someone who is similar, alike, opposite, yet in front of. And then taken from the man's side, not his head, not his feet, not his rib, but his side he was split into. You could not, I mean, this is unprecedented. Like, this is the dynamite that was dropped into the ancient world. Now, I understand the biblical culture is still patriarchal. I understand that the men did not live up to this reality, and we get the picture of Genesis 3 where men will rule over women. But you could not start then from a more royal and exceptional place, a majestic place than these two are image bearers, male and female together. And the one solitary human cannot fulfill the vocation God gave to it. And so now we're going to make them male and female.
So where did it start? What was the intention? And what are we trying to get back to?
It started in Genesis 3, which was written already by a patriarchal culture. That's the thing. When you realize that the Israel story was already rolling when Genesis was written down.
Right.
And that they held themselves to their failure of the one flesh marriage. They went to polygamy instead. Of the kingship of Deuteronomy 17 that was supposed to be beautiful, but instead their kings were evil. And the fact that they were the women were equal in everything. And the fact that they held those ideals in the text, that's part of why I trust this whole thing, is because if you were making up and wanted to justify patriarchy, this is not how you do it.
Absolutely not.
In the ancient world.
Yep.
So it's dynamite either direction. If you want to say, nope, this was written first And then it's a record of the failure.
Yeah.
Or we've already failed, but they include the ideal in here because it was
that's
really
what I meant,
the
like,
ideal.
where did we start? This was the ideal. Right. And how do we, I'm like, if you think about this in the terms of the now and not yet and the kingdom and what we're trying to invite people into and what we're trying to inhabit and emulate ourselves, this is part of that puzzle. It's just, we've made all these little isolated fights, but the more you pick apart like a book like Genesis, you just keep seeing over and over again how many of these are just pieces of one large puzzle of what it means to be in the kingdom, or whatever, however you want to phrase it. But lifting up our sisters and our moms and that kind of stuff is just part of living into the kingdom and pushing back on, I don't know, just feels pretty straightforward.
So Mackie, one usage of this I forgot was Noah's Ark, interestingly enough. So like, talk about architectural features that deliver. The ark, the temple, the tabernacle. Totally. So the side of a building, a whole room, a ridge or terrace on a hill. The tabernacle
stuff is really powerful when you think about that metaphorically and just in every way, like humans creating a temple in which God dwells.
Right.
And I don't know, it's just the implication.
And the same word, one of the words used for that is one of the words that God uses to describe the building of the woman. I mean, come on, the building of the Ezer. It's so freaking ridiculous. So this is Tim Mackie. The building of the woman deliverer begins a design pattern that is fundamental to the biblical narrative, namely God's provision of a blessing or deliverance or sacred gift that is meant to bring the protagonist into closer union with God. Right? So God, the human is alone. God provides an Ezer. Israel is vulnerable. God is their Ezer in strength. God wants to dwell among them, so he builds a tabernacle. He builds a temple, right? I mean, he provides, he builds help for his people. So the first instance of that is he builds the woman to help. I mean, it's just so solid. Then we get, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. So what he's saying poetically is that she's me and she's not me. So bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh, she shall be called woman, Isha. I always get these mixed up. Which one is the man? I think Isha is woman and Ish is man. But it's the wordplay. Even woman and man in English, there's the wordplay.
Most men I know are Ish.
That's funny. But he's not. The important thing is he's not naming her. He names her mother of all the living in Genesis 3 at the end of the fall story. So he's not naming her as an expression of like authority. He's like responding to, we've looked all over for an Ezer, and here she is. Bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. She is Isha because I am Ish, or vice versa. I don't remember which it is. And so thus begins this incredibly important unity in the midst of diversity point that marriage is supposed to represent, but also the church. That's why Paul, when he's talking about the unity of the church, he brings up husbands and wives and how they become one flesh. And he's like, yeah, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about Christ and his church. So two becoming one, or a multiplicity or plurality becoming a unity, that picture is the picture of what God's doing on earth, right? Through image bearing. They both image God, but both are needed, right, to bear the image. Here, right, the one has become separated into two, and then they're rejoined into one through the one flesh covenant and act. This isn't just about the sexual act. This is about the covenant, the reuniting of covenant. So do you see that? He takes the one, splits them, and then covenant, including the sign of the covenant, which is sexuality, is the significant bringing back of the two into oneness.
Well, it's so interesting too, because what are the implications of that? Two people choosing to it's almost this weird, I don't know if you want to call it greater, but like if we were one as we existed, right? There's not a lot of autonomy in that, but choosing in a covenant to rejoin and to purposefully, does that make sense? Like there's something kind of magical and special about this, the role that we play in the covenant language rather than just being programmed to exist, or however you want to phrase that. You know what I mean? Like it's just a really interesting implication of the role that we play in choosing and then continuing to choose. Like anyone who's ever done a wedding, usually you talk about like, there's all like, you know, when you were talking about the love stuff in the last episode about choosing, about feelings and that kind of stuff. But how many of us, after we've been married for a while and some of those feelings change in certain ways, do you choose into that covenant on hard days?
Totally. And the one flesh here, just as a note towards that end, is more kinship language than it is sexuality language.
Totally. Yep.
So the big pattern that's being introduced here, to use Mackey's language, is unity in diversity. So
like that.
So the two, the different ones, although they're similar, become one again, and that's part of what covenant love is. Well, that's going to go through the whole Israel story and the church story.
Yeah, and the American story.
And so, yep, exactly. So when Paul is looking for, hey, church, you need to be unified, even though you're many and you're different. Hey, let me pull an example here, and he pulls Genesis 2, one flesh. That's why he says, I'm talking about one flesh. I'm talking about Christ in the church, guys. Come on. Oh, it's so ridiculous. And that's why the most socially significant thing the early church did was they ate at one table as a unified group. That male, female, Jew, Greek, slave, free, all ate at one table. That the plurality and the unity there was the definitive marker that Jesus had risen from the dead.
So good.
So marriage, so we just have sexualized the whole one flesh thing into the sexual act. That's not what, that's the sign of this, but that's not all that is. That's referring that, so that design pattern is going to play out all throughout, regardless of whether or not you're sexual or not. You know
what
I
do
mean?
you think about that in regards to like, why does Paul say maybe it's better not to get married? Jesus didn't get married because we put such an emphasis in the church on marriage. And obviously we hear these big pastors are out there like, you weak sauce if you're not a man in a house providing and being married and being a husband.
Don't even get me started about weak sauce.
With what Paul said, how does that, is he speaking to something different in that?
No, Paul's speaking about the same thing, but he's defining the kinship group as the church family. See, the thing that Jesus does that's so shocking is he takes the language of blood loyalty and flips it on its head and applies it to his disciples. So when Jesus, and this would be a worthy conversation for us, but when Jesus says, when he hears that his mother and brothers are waiting outside for him, and he says, well, who are my mother and my brothers? And he looks at his disciples and he says, whoever does the will of my Father are my mothers and my brothers and my sisters. Dude, you could not, I mean, that struck at the very heart of group identity. Yes, in an honor and shame culture. And so what Jesus says when he talks about hating your mother and father, or I've come to bring division between a mother and a father and all of that language is Jesus using the language of family to now apply to his disciple group. So to follow Jesus in the first century was to be a part of Jesus's group.
I'm just thinking about folks who are unmarried who have not, maybe
this is
never
where that
will.
goes.
Yeah. So it's like, but in the church, you know, how many years ago was it where we finally on Father's Day or Mother's Day, we're just like, hey, we're not going to just celebrate this because there's people who have lost their mothers or had abusive mothers or were orphaned or whatever. We figured out that in our celebrations, we have made some people feel ostracized or worse. And we do the same thing with marriage in the church. Like we talk about it in a way that is really painful for a lot of folks. So it's like, I'm hoping that this conversation is, and just this sliver of it is helpful in that scenario where, you know, there are people who are sitting in those pews or chairs every week and are being made to feel like something's wrong with them because of that fact.
That's so good, Tim. Yeah, absolutely. Or infertile couples or single people or divorced people or widows, widowers. Absolutely. We're not talking about the nuclear family here.
But it is usually talked that way.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's not what like the husband and wife language is used here, which is fascinating. And also the abandon and cleave to, that's covenant language. So, but it's the introduction of many formed into a covenant. That's the pattern. It's not husband and, you were two single people and now you're husband and wife. Right. The pattern is many people agreeing in covenant to become one flesh. And so, yes, husband and wife, and the male and the female are made to fit together and all of that. Yep, got it. But Paul, Jesus, and Peter takes that reality and pushes it into the church so that your kinship group, right? John will even say, listen, or no, it's Paul to Timothy. Paul will say to Timothy, listen, treat older men as fathers and older women as mothers, and younger men as brothers, and younger women as sisters with absolute purity, right? So what Jesus has created is a new family. Now, new family to us doesn't mean much because we create new families all the time through, step families and whatever else. And some of those are great. Some of them not so much. But Jesus is taking the language used of the highest level of loyalty in the ancient world, loyalty to siblings, and blood relatives, and applying that to his church. And in so doing, he's saying, if it's not just that he's saying, listen, choose God before you choose people. He's saying, no, choose God's people before any other kinds of people. To follow Jesus. Salvation literally meant in the first century when Jesus was walking around, joining Jesus's group and assimilating his group identity. That's why Peter's betrayal was so significant in the ancient world, because Peter wasn't disidentifying with Jesus. He was disidentifying with Jesus's group, which was disidentifying with Jesus.
Yeah, and then you unpack that further and further and further, which we don't have time to do, but what that means to be part of that group, part of that, what it is that you're being invited into and why and how, and then what are the implications for those around you, yada, yada, yada. So it gets interesting because it fits into all those different
Absolutely. categories. And that's why Paul just uses brother and sister language. That's
smart.
The highest level of fidelity wasn't between husband and wife in the ancient world because you were of two different bloodlines. It was of siblings because you were of one bloodline. So when he's using brother and sister language, and it's interesting, one scholar was reading said he only uses it when there's division. He's reminding them of their tribal identity as brothers and sisters. I mean, this unpacks, but this is where it starts. Yeah. This picture is where it starts. And that's, so what does it mean to be human? Well, it means, of course, I'm an individual, but it's not good when I'm an individual.
That's so good. Because, I think people get hung up on that when you or Gombis are talking about individuality and stuff. I think some people sometimes internalize that as, it can be confusing because you are an individual. You know what I mean? Like your brain is only thinking the thoughts that are in your brain. You're not sharing a collective consciousness of it. So it's not that being an individual as you are is wrong, but it's what you're being called into out of that. Like, it's not correct just dwelling in your individuality. Well, this is hard for me as a 4, right? We've talked about this. Like, everything I do is about being an individual, hence yellow hair. But it's like you know what I mean? Like, we just have to, it's so much more beautiful and less condemning and invitational rather than whatever. I just think that's really big. I think people get lost in that individual language.
Absolutely. Because the flip is, in America, I use the group to further my individuality.
100%.
So the church exists to help me in my relationship with Jesus, right? Or this group helps me get ahead, or whatever it is, right? In the New Testament, what I'm doing is my individuality. I bring that to the group, and that's my gift to the group.
Yeah, it's a potluck.
You know what I mean? The group. Yeah, exactly. The group doesn't exist for my individuality. My individuality exists for the group.
And your flavor is important.
It is. Well, that's Paul's body metaphor, right? Some of you are freaking elbows. We need elbows. It's great that you're not all elbows. Hallelujah. So you're an individual elbow. But an individual elbow only makes sense when it's attached to tendons and joints and ligaments and flesh and circulatory systems and whatever else, right? To just find an elbow in the middle of the street, you'd go, that's awful. That's wrong. That's low toe, right? That's not good.
A pile of hands isn't going to accomplish anything.
Exactly. So yes, it is hard for us because we are individuals, but our individuality exists precisely for the health of the group.
Yep.
And so all that is to say that picture in Genesis 2 becomes the pattern of unity that we see all woven throughout all the New Testament writings.
Yeah.
And that, I just never knew that. Like it was just reduced to sexual purity. And hallelujah, I'm all for sexual purity. I'm all for fidelity. Great. Let's do it. Like there's so much damage we do there and have done to us.
And that'll be, I think that's at some point a conversation we should have because of how sexuality has been framed, how purity was framed. So you and I have had conversations off mic about like, well, then what do you tell your kids? And what does it mean? And why be pure? If it's not for this other reason, are there other reasons or maybe not? So that'll be an interesting one to unpack it. There's just so many things that we grew up with that need to be unpacked. It's exhausting.
Yeah, it is exhausting. You bet. But again, the whole point of this long series has been to, and guys, I mean, I have so much more planned. I don't know if we'll get to it all, but the idea is these foundational stories in Genesis aren't about the age of the universe. They're not about science versus faith. They are establishing fundamental aspects of what it is to be a human person. Now, you may disagree with the answers it gives, but that's no doubt that's what it's doing. Mm-hmm. It is world building for you science fiction fans. It is world building. It is giving you an entire universe full of symbols and meaning and significance, out of which then the rest of the story will make sense.
Yeah.
But everything Mackie has this great argument about how Genesis isn't just the first book of the Bible. It's literally the introduction to Torah. Like everything brought up in Genesis gets resolved and addressed in Torah and in Christ. And so if you start wrong, you end wrong, right? Yeah. If you don't understand the problem, then you misunderstand what Jesus is doing when he comes as a fully human.
What did we say? 16 episodes in, and we have barely gotten through the first two chapters, which you established at the beginning are the two that are often neglected.
Absolutely.
We always start with the third, and we've spent 16 on 2.
Yeah. We're done with 2 now. So 16 on the first 2.
There you go.
3 is really profound because the threads of the first 2 chapters get pulled into 3.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden 3 isn't a picture of, these perfect humans living in a perfect place blew it, but rather, man, we were invited into so much more and we didn't.
Yeah.
And that's just a different fundamental. And I'm guilty of that all the time.
Yeah, all of us are.
So the reason I follow Jesus is he shows me what it is to be the image of God, right? Paul's language is full of this. He's the only image. But image of God turns out to be fully human. Like that's what it turns out to be. So yes, I'm brought into God's group to relearn human social practices because I've been deformed as a solitary individual away, from such a thing. So
that's a really big statement. Say it again.
You're a big statement. I have no idea.
Jesus, that to be fully human is to be, how did you word that?
So Jesus comes as the image of God.
Right.
Paul in Colossians, like he is the invisible image of God, or he is the image of the invisible God. Right. And so there's all sorts of image language applied to Jesus. So you're like, yes, Jesus images God, the first human ever to do so perfectly.
And to do that as a fully.
And then what does it mean to image God? It means to be fully human.
Yeah.
Because that was the original vocation. Yeah. Right? Was to image God. So in Jesus, we're being restored to the proper human vocation of image bearing as male and female and as being royal priests. So absolutely. So none of that. So to say, hey, only some of that is spiritual and the rest is secular. I mean, that's just to miss massive swaths of no, what God wants to do. It's reorienting driving and it's reorienting gardening and errands and bill paying and the whole thing.
Love it.
So I love you. This is so fun, guys. We're so honored. We are so stinking honored to be a part of this. So thank you. To be continued. We'll dive into Genesis 3 next. See ya.
Thank you, thank you, thank you for listening to this conversation. The Voxology Podcast is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that is made possible by listeners just like you. If you'd like to partner with us, you can do so at patreon.com/Voxology Podcast or on Tithely, tithe.ly, search Voxology Podcast. You can interact with the hosts on Facebook /Voxology Podcast or on Instagram at Voxology Podcast and on Twitter or X, whatever it is, at Mike Erie. Thank you, thank you, thank you for walking this long road with us.